welcome back from top of the wall. My name is Mason Opp, and today we have another awesome Pauper deck. We have General Mills, an Abzan Tortured Existence deck. And this deck is playing a full playset of Tortured Existence with an actual backup copy in Undertaker. We have a Tragic Poet to help us get back the Tortured Existence, and we can use the Tortured Existence to get back the Tragic Poet for another layer of protection to protect it from any kind of removal spell. Just main deck, which is fantastic. I loved having that. We also have our dredgers. We have Stinkweed Imps, a great blocker, great dredger. Love having this thing in the deck. It's just amazing creature on the battlefield to threaten to block with in either the air or in the ground. Good against Delver. Shambling Shell to put +1/+1 counters on our creatures, have them class up, get a little bit bigger, and continuously cycle to get back more of it if we desperately need to make creatures bigger. And we have our 4 Golgari Brown Scales. The Brown Scales actually only dredge for 2, but they can actually be repeatedly brought back from our graveyard to our hand to gain 2 life. And with Tortured Existence and a Golgari Brown Scale in the graveyard and in the hand, we can actually cycle them back and forth as long as we have access to 2 of them. Every time we pay a black, we can just gain 2 life, which is really strong. And in this deck, we actually have something that accelerates us. We have two different kinds of things that accelerate us. We have Street Wraith, which is a swamp up creature, 3/4 for 5 mana. Okay against black matchups, pretty decent. It's hard for them to kill, but the important part is the cycling part. The cycling is paying 2 life, discard a card to draw a card, which Dredge is a replacement effect for drawing if we choose. So we can use Tortured Existence to discard one of our Dredge creatures, and then cycle Street Wraith to get back the Dredge creature. So we can continuously loop this interaction and end up just paying a black and some life and just mill ourselves for some cards. But if we're using the Brown Scale, we don't pay any life. We just pay 1 black and mill ourselves for 2, which is really strong. And it's actually a great way to mill ourselves very fast at instant speed. Now, for some of the meat cards of the deck. But before that, we should actually look at the Rotting Rats, the other accelerant. I mentioned the 2 of them. This is it. This is the closest thing we have to a Liliana in Pauper right now, making each player discard a card when it enters the battlefield. Only 1/1, not a good body, but it also has Unearth. So when we dredge it over or we discard it, we can still have access to it as an unearthed creature. And making each player discard a card, remember, our hand size is probably going to be lower than our opponents, and our cards are more valuable to us than our opponents are, like in our graveyards. So they would prefer to play their cards, but they can't get access to them again a lot of times when they're put into the graveyard, while we can. And doing just like milling over a lot of times about half of our deck. We can play a couple of these out, make our opponent discard 3 cards. We can get rid of maybe useless land, maybe some things that we don't even want. Get in for just like a couple of 1/1s and have some blockers left up, which brings us to the meat of the deck, the Phantoms. The Phantoms are awesome. We have Phantom Tiger and we got Phantom Nomad. Both these creatures, they enter with 2 +1/+1 counters, and if damage would be dealt to them, prevent that damage, remove a +1/+1 counter from the one being dealt damage. So Phantom Nomad just enters as 2 for 2/2 for 2. Phantom Tiger enters as a 3/2 for 3. I like the bigger front end. I feel like the power is worth sometimes more to me. So that's why I have this in more than the Nomad. Plus, we have easier access to green in this deck. Now, for some of the value cards that we're milling over, we have First Sphere Gargantua. First Sphere Gargantua is a great card to mill over because even though that it's a 5/4 for 6 mana that enters and draws us a card, and we lose a life, we can actually unearth it for 2 and a black, and we can get that same ETB. Plus, it'll have haste, and it sacks at the end of the turn, so we can just recklessly just bring these things back, swing in, get a card, and we can actually choose to dredge that card too. Now, one of our other value cards is Tilling Treefolk. Just a 1/3, but it gets us back 2 lands from our graveyard to our hand. And we actually have some good land cards that have some relevant interaction, like Bajuka Bog to exile opposing graveyards main deck, and Cave of Temptations to put more +1/+1 counters on our Phantoms. And we can actually continue to block with the Phantoms and use the Phantoms more often. We also have the one Viscera Seer. Viscera Seer allows us to sacrifice some of our creatures to reuse their ETB effects or to gain value when they would otherwise die to removal. So we can get a scry in exchange for their death, and we can help get rid of some of the value off the removal that our opponents are playing sometimes. Grave Scrabbler. You can pay 3 and a black, and it enters as a 2/2, or you can Madness it by discarding it to, let's say, Rotting Rats or our a Tortured Existence. You can pay the 1 and black, still enters as a 2/2, but you get to return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and you can sacrifice it to, let's say, Viscera Seer, and then you can pay another black mana to discard one of the creature cards that you used this to get back, and you can discard it to Tortured Existence to get back Grave Scrabbler. So you restart the cycle, but with 1 extra card. So for 4 mana, you're essentially getting back 1 creature card from your graveyard. And that is just like some pretty good value at instant speed. Now the actual last card, creature card in the deck that we'll be milling over is Crypt Rats. Just pay X black mana, and each player is dealt X damage, and each creature is dealt X damage. So this does also kill Crypt Rats, but that's fine. We can get that back, and potentially a lot of our Phantoms will survive to continue to chump block for us or get in. The Crypt Rats, the reason why it's here main deck is because there's a lot of aggro decks. There are a lot of aggro decks in the format. Travel Preparations. For 1 green, we get a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And it also has Flashback for 1 and a white. So for 2 mana, 2 more power on board, and you can mill it over to get that value still like more cards getting just more value from the graveyard. Then our lands, our mana base, we have 1 forest and 5 swamps because black is actually a more important color for us in the deck. We are more black than anything else, and we're using Tortured Existence a lot in this deck. Speaking of black, it looks like almost everything else gives us black mana. We have Scoured Barrens to gain us life, Jungle Hollow to gain us more life, Blossoming Sands to gain us life. We have 10 of these tapped lands. And we also have the Golgari Rot Farms to cycle back Bajuka Bog. I almost always mess that up. Babuka Bog to exile graveyards more frequently if we repeatedly want to do it to keep our opponents from getting the fuel that they need for Gurmag Angler. This helps us make the land drops that we wouldn't make otherwise normally. The things that I guess we would be afraid of in this deck are probably Tron, because right now in Tron, there's 5 different variations of Tron that I know of. Tron is one of our worst matchups, and Tron's always there, so having Choking Sands on the sideboard is never a bad plan for us. Then we have the Chainer's Edicts. Boggles is also a very bad matchup for us, because a lot of times they can give their creature trample, which does not care about the Phantoms. It does not care about whatever we're blocking with. Tokens can run away with the game, so adding in more Crypt Rats, we have 2 in the side, just to have 2 additional Wrath spells in our deck to get access to. We have Gnaw to the Bone for burn decks and the extremely aggressive decks that might try to burn us out or just rush in too early, too fast, like Goblins, for instance. We also got Raven's Crime, so that way the lands that we get back with Tilling Treefolk can actually be used as retrace fuel for Raven's Crime, make our opponents discard cards like counter spells that they might be holding up to counter our more important spells. We also have 1 Spore Frog in the side. Spore Frog actually can be used to lock people out of the game, because most decks will try to win using combat, trying to attack in and beat your face out. But if you have the Spore Frog, you can slot that in and use that as a lock against them and prevent them from actually dealing us combat damage, and we can repeatedly get it back with Tortured Existence, locking them out forever, making it so that they can't win. We also have Wicker Bow Elder. Wicker Bow Elder is just there for artifacts and enchantments. It's a decent beater. It's good to sit there and help try to trade with Mirror Enforcer or blow up Mirror Enforcer or just blow up some stuff for us. And also it's here for the Astrolobes, which are actually relevant and valid targets, especially with the Mardu Monarch currently in the format. which is also a rather grindy deck. Not exactly one of our worst matches, but it is something important to think about and something that we don't want to get outclassed too easily. After removing the -1/-1 counter from this creature, it becomes a 4/4, and it can't be blocked without killing and eating the monarch creature that they have. That would be it for the deck. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you'll join me next Saturday when I do another Pauper deck tech. And now on Wednesdays, I'm also doing standard deck techs. I just did spirits. Next time, I'll be doing something else. I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking something green. And if there's anything that you would like to see built, let me know in the comments below, either on tapdot.net, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, in the comments below. And I'd be more than happy to try to build it, take a crack at it, and just enjoy playing around in any format that you can think of. Go ahead, let me know, and coming in for that face touch.